Welcome to Still Kicking with Billy Hauer, and another day of creatively resisting corporate government and destructive technology. It is Tuesday, June 6th, 2017, and I am your host, Billy Hauer, and I am still kicking. Another week I have survived. And I'm going to stay away from the usual format of the Luddite Lounge and the Fascist Spotlight, and I just want to talk today about, we may just dump that format altogether. This is a new show, and I don't know what it's going to be. This is show number 18, so anyway, writing the show takes a lot of time, researching the show takes a lot of time, and I'm playing 2 gigs a week, which takes a lot of time, only because of rehearsal, really. So I'm trying to fit it in a week. Also, I do all my own housework and stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today because it has to do with power. I once had a professor who said there's really nothing to talk about except power, because power is what it's all about. And of course, he's right up to a degree, and I think actually relationships are what it's all about, and having good relationships, like I do with my pretty good producer, Pete. And we managed to get along, even though we're pretty different people. I'm more of a counterculture, and he's more cultured. But anyway, Pete's got a lot going for him, and I'm sorry you all don't know him better, but maybe that will evolve too, and we can somehow get him to say things on the show. But anyway, I want to talk about your power. Your personal power really lies in your choices, especially your consumer choices. And what got me thinking about power was Trump bailing us out of the Paris Accords. And, and people were pretty upset about that. My friends were pretty upset about it and brought it up to me. One of my friends is an environmental lawyer, and he was pretty upset about it. And I said to him, well, we don't really have to have the government involved to reduce our greenhouse emissions. And he goes, well, what about coal? And I said, well, coal is already going down due to market forces, thanks to fracking and all this cheap natural gas that they're releasing from the rock. And it's just cheaper than coal and easier to use than coal, because with natural gas you don't have a coal ash pile and all that. But anyway, that's mostly market forces. But you don't have this power unless you love yourself. And it's very important to love yourself, because as we talked about love, love isn't some emotion, it's a point of view, and it's the point of view that cares. And it's the opposite of selfishness, and it's when you care about people. And it's really important that you care about yourself. And if you care about your neighbors and you care about your children and your grandchildren, you will want to reduce your greenhouse emissions. And your power to do that lies in the choices that you make. It's also true for your health. If you want to be healthy, you don't really need Obamacare. All you really need to do is love yourself enough to take care of yourself. And love is a great thing. Caring is a great thing. It does take effort, but it increases your freedom. It increases the lightness in your life. It's a wonderful thing. But let's talk about the environment first and greenhouse emissions. Now, what I have done personally, and I'm just going to tell you what I've done personally. What you do could be completely different. But we're so used to looking at elites or the government or our scientists to solve everything, and we never look to ourselves. And that's so disempowering, and in a way it's kind of infantile. I care about the planet, and I care about the choices I make and what they do to the planet. And so what I did was I got myself a high-efficiency vehicle. And I've always had high-efficiency vehicles. I had a Geo Metro for years, and I drove it very little. It had 3 cylinders. It was a tiny car. And I lived in Key West in those days, and I hardly had to drive it at all. I walked almost everywhere. And I only really used it to come back here to Kentucky to see my parents. So I have a high-efficiency car that I have to have for my gig. I have to go down to Fonte's Coffee. And by the way, that's going well, and I invite you all to come down to Fonte's Coffee on Gridstead Road, where Lexington crosses it, and Louisville, where the show's coming from. But anyway, I bought this car I have a Honda Civic now, and I've had it for 12 years, and I'm only up to 94,000 miles. And that seems like a lot to me, but it's far less than what the average person puts on their car. But I have managed to cut my greenhouse emissions just from driving in half in the last 10 years, and I plan to cut it in half again because it can be done. But the way I do drive it less is that I make sure I have a serious shopping list, and I keep it on my kitchen counter, and I'm always adding to it. So when I go to the grocery, I get everything I need, and there's no second or third trip for that week. Today, I actually walked down Chenoweth Lane, where I live, to Paul's Fruit Market and got what I needed for lunch and a loaf of bread because it wasn't a lot, and I didn't have to carry it. And it's just under a mile to Paul's and same distance back, and it took me about 35 minutes to do the whole. And so I burn calories instead of oil. You can walk and you can bike, or I could have done without. If I didn't have time to walk and I didn't want to drive the car, I could have made pasta for lunch. There's always a way. You can always do without or substitute something else. There's something else I do to save the environment. And this is actually not only a huge greenhouse emission reducer, but it saves you a fortune, and that is hanging your laundry out to dry. My house was built in 1950, and it actually has a clothesline hooks in the brick that go between the garage and the house. And I loop this line around, and I have 3 long lines, and I can put over 2 loads on those lines. And on a day like this where it's beautiful, you can see the windows open. That's another thing you can do, turn off your air conditioner, especially when it's nice like today. Now, I lived in Key West, and I like it hot. I like it when guys aren't wearing shirts. And so I like to keep the windows open, and I'll be goofing around my house in shorts and a t-shirt this summer, and it will save enormous amounts. I mean, we're saving $100 or more a month in your budget, saving a lot of. So hang laundry on a line, and now that sounds like a big pain in the you-know-what, but it's really not. It's great exercise because you're doing this, and taking things down and bending down and standing up. It's great exercise. And when you take the laundry down, it's really easy to fold because everything's, already hung up pretty flat. And so you can just take it off the hooks and then fold it and throw it in the basket. I've learned how to fold everything without a table. But you can have a picnic table or something out there where you do your drying. But when I first started doing it, I was really surprised that my electric bill went down $35, $40 from not using the dryer. Because think about it, you put a bunch of wet clothes in your dryer, and it's got to turn all that weight over and over again, and it's got to heat up. So you've got to turn all that weight, and you've got a heating element that's using a lot of electricity. So you really do save a lot. Now I have a lawn, and I have to cut it, and I have a little Honda lawnmower, and it doesn't use a lot of gas, but I'm concerned about using the lawnmower a lot, and so what I've done is that I've set it up to a much higher level, and I wait a long time between mowings, When some weed really sticks its head above everything else, then I'm mowing. And I do it maybe once every week and a half or 2, and as summer wears on and there's less rain, I will mow it even less. And having the grass long is good for a couple of reasons. You don't have to mow it as often, and the bunny rabbits have more to eat out of the lawn, and so they eat less out of my garden, which they are eating out of. But I love the bunnies, and I don't mind sharing a few flowers with them, but mostly they eat the violets that's in the lawn, so that's good. Pete, it's growing a little dark. Is that a problem? Oh. Pete saves the day with his technical prowess. So you can do that, and if you don't want to cut grass at all, you can just get rid of your sod and do plantings in your yard, a lot of ferns and things like that, and not cut it all. Of course, if you do that, you might have to weed grass because your neighbor's grass will seed into your yard. It always will. Anyway, so you can turn up the level of your AC, or you can turn it off. There goes the script. And, turn up the thermostat so you don't, because, I tell you, it was so hot the last couple of summers, I remember was it 2 summers ago when we had almost a month and a half of 100-degree days? And I had my air conditioner set on 80. And 80 felt great when you came out of 100 degrees. That was cool. That was like great. There's a lot of ways to save energy. So turn down your heat in the winter and wear warmer clothes, which I also like to do. You can also take vacations closer to home and not fly, because flying is very energy intensive. If you want to take a boat, they're not very energy efficient. But sailboats are very energy efficient. So there's so many ways. I mean, it's just infinite. And they're all within your power. You don't need President Trump or Mitch McConnell or any of these politicians to do it for you. You can do it yourself. Now, you don't have to be extreme like the Amish. They use horses instead of tractors and trucks. And they don't use any electricity. They pump their water out by hand. They do all that stuff. They heat with wood. And but there's a lot you can do, and I'll tell you what, you're not going to like this, but this is something that would save a ton of electricity. Turn off your computer. The computers use an enormous amount of electricity. In fact, I read when the flat screen TVs were coming out that flat screen TVs use 4 times as much power as the old cathode ray tube TVs do. And of course, that didn't get a lot of publicity, but they reported it, and I read it, because I'm your forensic news reader. And that's one of the services I hope I offer you, is that I do read all this stuff that nobody else wants to read, and I try to pick out the things that they try to bury, that they only report once, like the fact that flat screen TVs are energy hogs. And so your flat screen on your computer, on this Apple thing we have here, uses a lot of electricity, but even more so the servers, the clouds. These clouds are huge polluters. Try to ask Google what their energy bill is. They won't tell you, because it's huge. It's huge. They are burning coal and natural gas like nobody's business. They are, reacting uranium, and they're doing it all because they need tons of power. As I've said before, get hot. They use as much energy as a hairdryer, and they get hot like a hairdryer. But if they get too hot, they quit working. So they have to be air conditioned. So these server farms or these big warehouses full of servers that are extremely air conditioned. Air conditioning, as you know, if you have it, is not cheap. So doing everything on the internet really does use a lot of power and burns a lot of fossil fuels. So, you could get rid of your ebook and just get a book. The book, you do not need power to read it. You do not need to mine lithium from the earth to read your book. Nobody can change your book, while you're not looking. If it's printed, it's just what it was printed originally. They're getting rid of a lot. They're editing a lot of Mark Twain and stuff right now, and censoring, really. And they're censoring it because of objectionable language, and it's no longer Mark Twain. It really isn't. And not 100% anyway. So get rid of your computers, get rid of your ebooks, cell phones. You can save the environment that way. And we could stop blowing holes in the ozone layer if we quit launching rockets into space. Now, you can't stop launching rockets into space, but what you can do is not get satellite radio. Because, see, there's your power. You have consumer choice. I would not buy a Tesla because Elon Musk is poking holes in the ozone layer a lot. And I care about the ozone layer because I have very fair skin. My dermatologist said, you don't have fair skin, you have very fair skin. And he said it's because I'm prematurely gray, and that means I have almost no melanin, and he says I'm worse off than a redhead. And skin cancer rates have been doubling every 10 years, doubling every decade. And it's because we have degraded the ozone layer, and we continue to. Even though we're not using chlorofluorocarbons like in our, every time we launch a rocket, every time they launch a rocket, boom, big hole in the ozone. And there's other ways to save energy besides not patronizing the space industry. Also, vegetarian. Vegetarians, beef is a very energy-intensive thing to grow, and you won't be supporting factory fishing trawlers that have these miles-long drift nets that come loose and just kill everything as they drift around in the ocean. And you don't have to worry about mad cow. And you don't have to worry so much about heart disease and diabetes. So becoming a vegetarian or just eating more fiber can do a lot for your health and for the environment. And you can also stop buying bottled water. I used to buy bottled water. And besides being expensive, if you think about it, buying a bunch of plastic, and that plastic has to be shipped to you in a truck. And if instead you just get one of those filters, which I have now, I have a pure filter. I had a Brita, but I've got a pure now. And I eliminate all that plastic and all that truck driving. It just comes right through the water company, and I try to make it a little more pure. So you can stop buying bottled water. There's so many things you can do to save the environment. I cannot name them all. Now let's talk about our health a little bit. Do you need Obamacare? Well, yeah, if you get sick, it'd be nice to have. But you're less likely to get sick if you exercise. And like today when I went to the store, I burned calories, not oil. And you could eat more fiber. They found out that fiber, they said, this microbiologist, I heard him on NPR about 2 years ago. And he had just written a book. And he said, we always knew fiber was good for you, but we never knew why. He says, and now we do. And he says, it turns out fat wasn't the big heart disease culprit we thought it was. It was really sugar and salt. And he said, the reason we know that and what it has to do with it, sugar and salt are crystals, and they're instantly absorbed by your body. And so your organs have to start processing it immediately. But when you eat something that has fiber, whether it's whole grain bread or whether it's just a carrot or broccoli or something like that, what the fiber is an architecture that the food clings to, and it makes it digest more slowly. And that is better for our organs. They're not overwhelmed by instant nutrition. And when we were hunters and gatherers, we basically just ate off the trees and the bushes and the vines, and it was all raw, and it all had fiber, and it nourished us throughout the day. And as we walked to the next patch of where there was something to eat. But when you eat a croissant, it's so refined, that flour, that your body absorbs it instantly, and it's full of sugar and it's full of salt to boot. It's easy, but expensive. If you've ever shopped in the produce section, it is unbelievable that apples are now a luxury item. Apples were always 9 cents, 19 cents. Now they're $2-3 a pound. It's crazy. Tomatoes, $2-3 a pound. And a tomato is heavy like a water balloon. And it's very expensive to eat fresh produce. So what can you do? You can garden. And I love to garden. And I just moved from an apartment complex after 5 years. And you can grow stuff even on a little patio in pots. And with the price of tomatoes, it's always worth a couple of tomato plants because they're unbelievably expensive. And so you can eat well and save money. And of course, gardening is a little bit of exercise too. You can also stop smoking tobacco. You don't, let me just tell you that I used to be a cigarette smoker. I smoked for 31 years. I started when I was 11. And I was overweight until I was 35, 36. And that's when I started to change. I didn't quit smoking until I was 43, but when I was 35, I started to eat better. I became a vegetarian when I was 26, but I was a milkshake French fry vegetarian. I got better and better at it as the years went by, and I upped my game. And as these kind of health changes or lifestyle changes are things you can do incrementally. Just try one little thing. And the great thing about when you do these things is that you get this incredible feeling of accomplishment. And I love to smoke marijuana, but there's no better buzz than the good feeling you get when you accomplish something, whether you've written something or you've done something. And especially when you've done something for yourself because you love yourself enough to take care of yourself. So you can stop smoking tobacco. And that's a hard thing to do, and I know how hard it is. And you don't realize how much energy. And so when you quit, it's really good to do something to use up that extra energy, because it will manifest itself as irritability and anger. And so what I did is that's when I started swimming. And I love swimming because it's exhausting, and I just love the water. When I was a kid, my parents couldn't get me out of the pool. So I love water. You can find an exercise that you love. I love walking. I love walking because I like looking at other people's gardens and their landscaping. I like meeting their cats and their dogs. Walking is just a great way to see your own environment, and it's great exercise. It does get your heart rate up. Swimming is a little better because you're moving your arms. You can jog 20 miles a day, but you're only exercising 2 aortas. You have 3. 2 service your whole trunk, your trunk and your legs. 1 services your arms and your brain. And a long time ago, they did a study about longevity by occupation, and they found, to their surprise, that actors were living the longest, and they had the least amount of dementia and old age doing this all day. And they were doing music, which they loved, and so they were getting this great upper body workout. So swimming gives you that. Hanging laundry gives you that. You will think of other things that can do that. And a lot of things, a lot of the power that we use, electricity, oil, all that, is really for convenience. It's replacing chores we used to do, like walking or doing our laundry. When I was poor, and I was poor, I'm not now, thank God, but I was. And when I lived in Key West, I was very poor. And I didn't have the money to go to the laundromat. So I borrowed a cup of soap from my neighbor, and poured it into my sink and did my jeans in the sink. And then the hard part was rinsing them. That was really hard. You had to keep rinsing and rinsing until the soap was gone, and then hang it up to dry. But I would do that because I just didn't have the money. There's always a way to survive, and there's always a way. Now, I love flowers, very expensive, so I garden. And I don't buy the flowers and put them in the garden. I buy seeds. I have $10 invested in my garden, and I'm going to have more flowers than I know what to do with. And I'm going to be giving them away. And Pete's going to be bringing flowers home to his wife because I'm going to give him a whole bunch to do that with. So you can even live like a rich person and not have any money. It's all in your choices and the choices that you make. You can also do something for your health, like stop drinking alcohol and smoke pot instead. Now, it's better if you don't do anything. It doesn't cost you anything. And pot is wildly expensive unless you grow it yourself. But it's interesting. This article was in the Wall Street Journal last weekend. Just one drink can harm. And it's about women and breast cancer. And they used to think one drink was okay, and now they realize it's really not. Women and alcohol, it just increases your chances of breast cancer big time. Also, this was in the paper last week. Marijuana may be helpful, chief says. And the chief is Dr. David Shulkin. And he is the secretary of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He's the first non-military guy. He's a doctor. And he says it's looking like marijuana is really helping with post-traumatic stress disorder. And they've been really having a hard time treating that. And I believe a lot of Americans have it. I think a lot of cops do. I think a lot of military people do. A lot of people have been abused in different ways, and I think they have milder forms. Even verbal abuse can give it to you. I think I have it, to tell you the truth. And I think it's one of the reasons I've always liked pot. And you may remember a writer named Michael Pollan, and he had a show. I don't know, how many minutes are we into this? I don't want to go too long. But he had a show on PBS, 24. Oh my God, I got to get to the end of this. But anyway, he found out that he said the cannabinoids are actually made by our brain. Our brain makes them when we're in a traumatic situation. And what it does is it makes them, and our cannabinoid receptors receive them, and we calm down, and it brings us into the moment. And we don't think about what just happened or what the repercussions are going to be. And it keeps us calm. And if you have PTSD, you wake up and you think you're still in a war zone. And what the pot does, it brings you into the moment. You go, oh, I'm home. I'm okay. The sunset's beautiful. The house is beautiful. The trees are beautiful. pot brings you into the moment. So think about giving up drinking and smoking pot for a while, at least to help you get off the alcohol. Or you can just not party at all. You can but it's very important to cut way back on salt and refined sugar. My blood pressure's a little high, and I've gotten it down by cutting back on the sugar. And of course, I like singing, and I like swimming, and I do Pilates, but there's so many ways to exercise that depend on O'Bearance Company, and don't depend on the Paris Climate Accords. We can reduce our own pollution. I don't know why. I've never met an environmentalist, whether he's a lawyer or what, who ever endorses conservation. I guess it's un-American to not consume more and more and more all the time, because we have to have this constant growth. But you can conserve energy. You can conserve using things that cause pollution, and we all do that. We use things that cause pollution. When we fly on vacation, we cause a lot of pollution. So do what you can to cut it back. Get in the pool, swim, take a walk, jog, play tennis, whatever you like to do. I like to get in the dirt and garden, and that's exercise. And so it's just great. So basically what I'm asking you to do is to choose love. Love yourself. Discover your own power. Enough to take care of yourself. Care enough about the planet to make some sacrifices. Because it's not the planet that's going to go. It's us that's going to go. We're the ones that might not survive a dengue fever or whatever yellow fever outbreaks that may become because the mosquitoes have more territory. And also forgive those who hurt you. Just lighten up and let it go and concentrate on yourself. Love yourself so you can love them. Because if you don't think you deserve love, you won't think I deserve love or Pete deserves love or anybody deserves love. You deserve love. Love yourself. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you for watching another episode of Still Kicking with Billy Hauer. We'll be back next Tuesday. That is, if I'm still kicking. Claim your personal power. Live up, be free, and remember, I love you. See you next week.